Hello, PR Maven Nation. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, episode number 47, presented by Marshall Communications, creator of the Marshall Plan 65-Step Strategic Process. For those of you new to the show, I'm your host, Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I want to welcome you. My podcast provides my own unique perspective on the world of public relations and personal branding, including what I hope will be actionable takeaways. Every week, the podcast features interviews with successful industry leaders, top executives, and media personalities from around the globe, and today's guest is no exception. Lisa Desisto is the Chief Executive Officer for Masthead, Maine, which publishes 6 daily and 23 newspapers in Maine. The titles include the Portland Press-Herald, Maine Sunday Telegram, Sun Journal in Lewiston, and the popular Forecaster newspapers. Lisa sits on the board of the Maine Press Association, the Associated Press, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare Foundation, and the Boys and Girls Clubs of Southern Maine. Before moving to Maine in 2012, Lisa spent 17 years at the Boston Globe, where she served as Chief Advertising Officer and General Manager for Boston.com. Lisa is a 1985 graduate of the University of Massachusetts at Amherst and lives with her family and a herd of goats and alpacas on a farm in North Yarmouth, Maine. So Lisa, to kick things off, tell us about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
Well, thank you, Nancy. And I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here with you. You know, I'm a huge listener. And so since I listen to so many of the podcasts on my trips around Maine, as I go to visit other newspapers that are part of our company, I've been listening to the podcast. So I'm really honored to be here.
Well, I'm honored as well, of course.
Thank you. So I arrived in Maine in 2012 to be the CEO of Maine Today Media, which at the time was the Press-Herald, Maine Sunday Telegram, the Kennebec Journal, and the Morning Sentinel. But my path to get here was I grew up outside of Boston in a little town called Stoneham, where Nancy Kerrigan hails from. That's our big claim to fame, and the zoo. And I went to UMass Amherst. So I started as an econ major and realized I was actually terrible in math. And my mother said to me, you know, you're so good with people. You should go into communications. And that was my guidance. And I switched. And then from there, I had this sort of niche career in media marketing. So I worked in the marketing departments of media outlets from the Boston Phoenix to Boston Magazine to Boston.com. And I spent the majority of my time at the Boston Globe. I was there for 17 years. So it's funny because all of my jobs had the word Boston in them. And then I up and moved to Maine, and it's been awesome, and I've never looked back.
One problem is you still do have a 617 area code on your cell phone.
I know. And, I think everyone can relate to that, and that you just get attached to your cell phone number.
Yeah, I know.
But I will tell you this, that I call subscribers, and I can't call them from my cell phone because they're like, I am not picking up that call.
Yeah.
So thankfully, we have soft phones at work, so my phone works anywhere, and I can call from a 207. But yeah, you're right. I got to give it up.
We need a strategy for that.
We do.
That'll be another time.
I think it's really just going to AT&T and taking care of it. But thank you. I'll work on it. So when I came to Maine, Donald Sussman was the owner of Maine Today Media, and they recruited me because I had a lot of digital experience. But when I got here, I realized how much the community really loves print. So I feel like one of my biggest challenges is figuring out that balance between growing our digital business, but also really taking care of and nurturing our print customers.
Well, and that's one reason why you are the perfect guest for this podcast, because, of course, the whole premise is balancing traditional and online. So I'm so glad that you're here to talk about this.
Well, thank you.
Because you honor both. I mean,
right.
And I think there needs to be a balance between both.
Yeah, and I think I'm happy to be in the newspaper business in Maine because we hear all the time how Maine has an older demographic. So I feel like we have a longer runway and we just have more time to think about that transition from print to digital. And we can watch what happens in some of those other younger states, if you will.
Right, exactly. But, I think people do like to look at the paper.
Yep.
And then they like to look at the online also. So obviously the ideal is to train people to look at both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's crazy how people say to me when they meet me, they say, I still get it in print, almost like they're apologizing for it. But it's like, yeah, we know that you do, and we know that you love it, and we know that when we change anything in the paper, we're going to hear from you about it, because there is a constituency for every piece of content in the newspaper, from the editorials, letters to the editor, to the TV listings, and the crossword puzzle.
That's right. And well, Maine's big slogan is "Don't you change a goddamn thing."
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know. I've learned that the hard way many times.
So, Lisa, if you had it to do over again, what would you do differently?
Well, I would have moved to Maine sooner. I think that is it. I spent a lot of time commuting. And when I look back on all those years where I was, stuck on 93 or in the tunnel or whatever it was, that is just wasted time. So I just think it's an amazing place, and I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you're here too.
Thank you.
I think you make Maine a better place.
People are are they still listening, because they could be pulling over, throwing up right now because of our love fest. But anyway.
I know, exactly. So can you give me an example of how PR and social media have helped to advance you personally, your company, or a client or customer?
Sure. I think a great example is about how we use social in the newspaper business, because social media is an incredible sampling tool for our journalism. So while we may have fewer people reading the newspaper than we did 10 years ago, we actually have more people than ever consuming our journalism across social media. So when you post a story, when your friends post stories, you get exposed to our journalism. So we just think that is wonderful. And then our challenge as a company is, well, then how do we convert that sampling into customer acquisition and a long-term relationship with someone?
And in your newsroom, do you have a scoreboard so you can see which stories are trending?
Yeah, our newsroom actually uses Chartbeat, which is a tool to see which stories are trending. And they have some great techniques where they will A/B test headlines to see which ones perform better, and have also really developed the science of writing headlines for the web versus headlines for print. It's very different. So we do, we at the core are our journalistic principles, but we use some of the tools and techniques to make sure that things are optimized.
Well, let's talk about the seagull.
No, let's talk about the whoopie pie, Nancy. Okay. So today, as we sit here in South Portland, the big chatter is, and actually we're running a poll on Twitter right now of which story is more uniquely Maine. Is it the whoopie pie theft in Skowhegan, or is it the seagull getting lifting the lobster roll? So I'm whoopie pie all the way. I feel like a seagull can take your lobster roll in probably 13 different states. But really, whoopie pie is all Maine.
It is. It is the official Maine snack.
Yeah.
Slightly lame, I think, to be called the official snack, but it still is.
I actually think it's a meal. So I think that you could really call it the meal. But I want to know when, and you will appreciate this from a PR perspective. So when are one of our whoopie pie companies going to step up and replace those whoopie pies that were stolen in Skowhegan? That's just a perfect PR opportunity for someone, right?
Yes, it would be.
Yeah.
That's what you call newsjacking.
Oh, is that what you call it?
Oh, yeah, newsjacking. That is taking advantage of something that's happening in the news and doing something about it and basically hijacking the story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I guess we should call like Isamax Snacks today and suggest that they...
Is that one of your clients?
No, they're not.
Oh.
I don't have
Well,
any...
they should be.
They should be, yeah. I don't have any whoopie pie clients.
Oh, well, there's an opening.
It would be a problem, kind of like when I was representing Cold River Vodka, and I felt responsible for drinking multiple Cosmopolitans every night.
Yeah. Well, you got to lift the brand. You got to lift the brand. Yeah.
I should be living a bicycle brand these days.
You should be.
So I know that PR, marketing, and social media have changed over the course of my own career. What techniques are you using now that you were not using when you started out?
So email is absolutely huge for us for customer acquisition. So sometimes we'll do things on pressherald.com, for example, where we'll drop the paywall and give a free trial. But to get access, you need email and to give us your email, and then we'll use those email addresses to push out subscription offers. So email has proven to be a really effective and low cost acquisition tool for us. So one of the things we were actually just in a circulation meeting the other day, talking about some new strategies for customer acquisition. And one of the folks on the team was talking about how expensive direct mail is and how we looked at direct mail to reach out to previous customers. So that's something that we've really moved away from. And it's been more cost effective for us for sure, using email.
Because I thought that perhaps direct mail was more effective these days because there's less of it.
Yeah, that hasn't proven to be true for us at all.
Yeah. So what was it that happened with Stephen King recently that helped your subscriber base?
Yeah, thank you. So earlier in the year, we started out with our new budget and we had made some cuts to things. And one of the things that we cut were book reviews written by local authors. Freelance book reviews. And so Stephen King got wind of it. It was actually the Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance.
Alliance, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So they because many of their members were folks that wrote these pieces for us, or it was their books that we were reviewing, so they were unhappy about it. So they started this petition, and Stephen King got wind of it. And so he put out on Twitter, tell the Press Herald to stop this, whether you live in Maine or not, tell them that this can't be. And so speaking of hijacking, we saw the tweet that he put out, I would say within 30 seconds of him sending it, and quickly assembled and said, oh my gosh, what do we do? Like, we just got called out to his 5 million followers. And so there was some quick discussion. Someone's like, it's just going to blow over. And I'm like, oh, no, it's not. Not with that many followers and not with he has a really loyal following. So we decided to respond, and we tweeted back and said that, wait a second, if you can get 100 of your followers to sign up for a digital subscription, we will bring back those freelance book reviews. And we had a lot of fun with it. We have incredible people that work on our social team, specifically Josh Linehan and Catherine Lee. They're both fun, irreverent, but also have incredible news judgment. And also our Cirque team mobilized, and Dave Greer put together an offer that was, I forget what the actual price was, but it was a low price, and it was use the promo code KING. And then some people were tweeting saying, wait a second, I want a print offer too. So then we came back with another offer. The promo code was CARRY. So all of this happened in 24 hours, and we got 278 new subscribers from many different states. And that was back in January. I think it was a 12-week offer. And I would say that of the folks who are in state, they are still subscribers. Some people just got along for the gimmick, but there was some staying power with that promotion. So I was proud of how we took advantage and mobilized in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, that took a little bit of chutzpah. I like that.
Yeah, it did. And, the thing is, it doesn't happen every day. You can't really create that kind of thing, but you just have to be ready to respond.
Yeah. Now you need to get Donald Trump to start tweeting about the Press Herald.
Well, he hasn't tweeted about the Press Herald, but he has tweeted about the press and referred to us repeatedly as the enemy of the people. And I do think that folks have rallied in support of the media. We've seen that with the growth of digital subscriptions, certainly at both the New York Times and the Washington Post.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad that people recognize that journalists are there to help tell the stories, the truth.
Yeah, well, we're just coming off so many high school graduations in Maine, and I was so proud of all the coverage that we had of the graduations, the messages to the graduates, the excerpts from the valedictorian speeches. We had it in the Sun Journal, we had it in the Morning Sentinel, and if local reporters aren't there no one knows other than the folks that were at the graduation what happened. And while it can be a grind to cover all these graduations in a short amount of time, I just think it's a really important piece of what we do.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a very important role.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And definitely local people want that local journalism.
Exactly. Yep.
So what have been some of the obstacles to success in your career, and how have you overcome them?
Well, I was thinking about this question, and one example for me was when I had a baby, or my baby, who's 12 now, and I was working full time at the Globe. It was really challenging to be a working mother and to have a high pressure job. Let's face it, the newspaper industry is challenging, and you got to be on your game. So one of the craziest things about working at a newspaper is there's this expectation that before you get to work, no matter what time you get there, will have read the newspaper and know it cover to cover. So when I've got an infant at home and I'm trying to get myself out the door, hopefully taking a shower, there's no way I'm reading the Globe before I leave. So with my horrendous commute, I would call my mother and she would read the paper to me. So
God bless her.
I know. Of course, she would add her commentary to it, which I didn't always parrot back when I was in the office. But it was important for me to know, what the key stories were and what the editorial was about that day. And so for me, the obstacle or the challenge for me was I just didn't have enough time. But I utilized that commute time to have someone read the paper to me.
I love that
and it was
story.
my mother. Yeah.
I love that story. That's so awesome.
My mother's an awesome Globe subscriber, and she keeps, I probably shouldn't say this on the podcast, but she's like, one day they're going to catch up with me because I still have that employee rate of yours. So you might want to edit that out. You might want to edit that out. Yeah.
Well, I had just started my PR agency when I had my first son, Craig, and I was afraid of losing all my clients, and I just couldn't do that. So luckily, he was born on a Saturday, so I could get right back to work on Monday. And yeah, my mom also was really helpful. She came and basically took care of the baby. So that I could work.
It's important to have a network. You got to have a network, but you also can't miss things either, right? So yeah, I don't miss a single Little League game.
Good for you. Those are some of the best times.
That's right.
Yeah, I have really good memories of my boys' Little League. So we're going to continue in a moment with more of this fascinating conversation with Lisa Desisto. But now it's time for our book and things to do pad giveaways.
Oh, do I get a free one as a guest?
I think you're going to.
Yes. Sweet.
Yes. So to win a copy of my book, PR Works, and one of the really wonderful PR Maven Nation things to do today pads, go to prmaven.com/giveaway, and you could be our next winner. And we're going to be back in just a moment after we hear about the Marshall Plan. Effective marketing is all about targeting your ideal audience with your ideal messages and your ideal media. That's the idea behind the Marshall Plan 65-step process. We have refined and tweaked the Marshall Plan process over the past 20 years because we aim to help our clients to come up with a strategy for their marketing that identifies their ideal audience, messages, and cost-effective media to connect their messages with their audience. For example, if you're running a McDonald's franchise, you probably don't want to target vegans. And if you have a vegan restaurant, you probably don't want to target people who love McDonald's. So that's the process we go through. We get up in the helicopter and we fly around together and look down at your business and come up with the best strategy and ways to measure your success. Check out marshallpr.com and learn more about the Marshall Plan. And thanks for listening to the PR Maven podcast today. Welcome back. And today we're talking with Lisa Desisto, CEO of Masthead, Maine. And we're going to dive right back in with more questions. So, Lisa, how do you measure success in your PR, social media, and marketing?
That is a great question, Nancy. One of the things that we're overly obsessed with right now are page views. And I've been obsessed with page views for more than 2 decades.
Is that
Oh my goodness.
print?
No, this is in online. So on our website.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we actually don't know exactly how many people read pages in print, but we do hope our loyal subscribers read every single page. That's what I'm thinking. But
Yeah.
So for our websites, we're obsessed with page views, and we want more page views. But really, that's not the right metric, especially since we have paywalls on our website. So it's more about, are your subscribers engaged? How long are the sessions that they're completing? How many articles are they reading when they're there? Because we have this crazy phenomenon on our website, and that a high percentage of our traffic comes from out of state because, when, the seagull eating lobsters in People magazine, people want to know what's going on in Maine. So those are kind of the one and done people. Whereas,
wait a minute, you said the seagull eating lobster, and that could be taken that it's a lobster that ate a seagull, but no.
The seagull eating lobster?
A seagull eating a lobster roll.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Some shorthand there. All right. So anyway, the folks that just come in and may read one story through social, they're kind of one and done and a lower value. So it's more about the people that spend more time with us, that are digital subscribers or our print subscribers who activated their accounts and look at our digital products. So we have to think about that level of engagement. And then another metric that we really use too is customer acquisition, new customer acquisition. So we think about that as a funnel, right? So the people that do come and visit us, that's a big number at the top of the funnel. And then how do we get them down to actually become paying customers? So we do a lot of funnel management and analysis. So people that start the checkout process in our digital subscription platform, and if they abandon their cart, what did we do wrong there? So those are kinds of things that we're always optimizing and thinking about. We are super excited right now. We're part of this pilot program with Google Labs, that is working with just 10 newspapers across the country to help them accelerate their digital subscription efforts. And we applied for the process. It was very competitive. We were delighted to have been selected. They were just here last week working with us, and we have some low-hanging fruit strategies that we can work on, like newsletters are really critical for deepening engagement and getting people to eventually become subscribers. So we want to figure out, how can we get more newsletter subscribers, and what other newsletters should we be creating for our audience? So we're excited to work with them on developing a playbook for a long-term strategy for digital subscriber acquisition.
I think that's awesome, because I always say Google's like Santa Claus. Google knows everything, whether you've been naughty or nice, and Google knows how to point people in the right direction.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of people think about how to optimize their websites for search, and what are the keywords that you need, and one of the crazy things that we've learned, well, maybe it's not that crazy, maybe it's obvious, is a lot of people use Google as a navigation tool. So you can't believe that, like, the most searched term for bringing traffic to our site is Press Herald. So when instead of people just putting in pressherald.com, they'll go to Google and put in Press Herald. So isn't that, do you use Google like that as a navigation, like if you want to get somewhere? Because a lot of people do.
Well, it's funny, when you first said a navigation tool, I was thinking, like, you mean if I wanted to drive to Machias? Oh. See, and when you said page views, I'm thinking, so yeah, I'm using, anyway.
Yeah.
I use Google for a lot. Yeah.
But if you want to find another website, you know, like, you might go to Google and put in Food Network.
Right.
As opposed to just putting in foodnetwork.com. So
yeah. I mean, you can't assume that it's a .com either. It might be a .net or a .biz, or
it could be.
Yeah. .gov,
.edu.
Yeah,
let's go on and on.
Yeah, right.
.org.
Yeah. And actually now there's all those vanity things too, like you can get .pr and .maine.
Yeah.
It's all kinds of things.
There's
and just
never a shortage.
This has all happened in the course of our careers, which I think is just amazing too.
Yes.
So most successful people like you and me have a network of fans and followers, either online or in person or both. How have you built your network of fans and followers? And has it been a conscious goal, or has it just happened on its own?
Yeah, for me, I really use social media as a professional tool. Even my Facebook page is it's about using it as a platform to share our journalism. So I'm active on Facebook, I'm active on Twitter. I'm not as active as I should be, and I forget how powerful it is LinkedIn. It's absolutely so powerful. And then I dabble a little bit on Instagram. For me, I haven't figured out yet how to use that tool to drive people back to our websites or experience our products. But I know that that's happening. So I have been conscious. I'm very um not thoughtful isn't the right word. Um, in following people back on Twitter. You follow me, I'll follow you. I will follow you back. I get frustrated when you see people that have so many followers and then they don't follow anyone. So it's sort of like they say, I don't really care what you have to say. So I think it's an effective way to build your network is by following people back. Now I'd be curious to ask you this question, not to turn it around on you, but now I'm at the point where if people friend me and I don't know them at all, I am being more selective and saying, I really have no connection to you. And I've also found if you're overly liberal with accepting um, requests on LinkedIn, that they often just turn into blatant solicitations, which makes me feel bad.
I usually look at who we know in common, or did we go to
Yeah,
the
I do
same
the same.
school?
Right, right.
So I try to evaluate if we travel in the same circles.
Yeah.
And I have been to a lot of LinkedIn training that they say it's okay to err on the side of accepting more people. But as soon as somebody solicits me for something they're trying to sell and I don't know them,
Right, when you
boy,
have no connection. Yeah, that
they are
doesn't feel
so
right.
done.
Yeah, that doesn't feel right.
Done.
Yeah, but they're powerful professional tools when used correctly. And I always try to be kind. Sometimes when I look back, well, first of all, you know how you have the Facebook memories things. Sometimes I get served these things and I'm like, I actually said that in 2007. No one cares that I was at my dining room table working late or oh my gosh. So I'm much more selective now about the things that I put out there and say, does anyone really care about this?
Well,
But
your mother does.
she does. That is true. That is
We were
true.
just talking about your mother.
Yeah, yeah. No, she's an aggressive liker and supporter of things on social media, which many people appreciate, myself
Yeah.
included.
I'm kind of sad. My mother had never learned how to, I mean, she's 86 and she hasn't learned how to use a computer and really doesn't have any desire. And it makes me sad because I feel like it would broaden her world on a daily basis.
For my mother, I think it was Mother's Day. We gave her an iPad a couple years ago, and it really has been a great connection tool for her to understand what her nieces and nephews are doing, our extended family. So it's really been a great connecting tool for her.
Well, and they say that Facebook now, I mean, that's one of the reasons that our kids aren't using
Exactly.
Facebook anymore because
Right.
it's for grandparents, it's one of the greatest way to stay on top of what their grandchildren are doing.
It is for sure. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's great. So, how has your network helped you to advance your career? I mean, somebody in Boston when you were at the Globe must have said, "Hey, Lisa would be a great candidate to come up to Maine."
Yeah, well, actually, so for my position, they used a recruiter, but I can only assume that she found me originally through LinkedIn. I know that Stephanie Manning, who is our VP, or no, Group Director of Marketing and Circulation, when she was the first person to contact me when it was announced that I was coming to Maine, and she found me through LinkedIn. And at the time, she was working for Oprah's magazine and lived with her family in New Jersey. But her husband, Tom Manning, was up here running the Miss Portland Diner, and they knew that eventually they wanted to get back to Maine. So, I distinctly remember sitting in my office at the Globe, and she was the first person to connect with me after that announcement went out. So that's an example of, how social channels really have changed people's lives.
Well, I have a similar experience with Steve Minnick, who's been on Channel 8 television now since 1991. And actually, when it was announced that he was coming to Channel 8 from out of state, I think he was in New Hampshire, I was the first person to reach out to him and welcome him to Maine. And he remembers that to this day.
Yep.
So to be the official welcomer
Right.
in a new position is powerful.
Yeah. And I think, just taking time to send people notes about promotions that they would get or changes to their announcements at their company, people remember that stuff. Now, of course, when you can do the handwritten note, that's always so much more appreciated.
Thank you for mentioning. That's what I was just thinking, because I actually do look at the accolades section of the Press Herald and the business pages, and frequently I will sit there at my dining room table with a pile of my note cards and stamps and a pen and write people congratulatory notes. So I think that's...
I'm sorry.
I was going to say it's a great way to stand out.
It is, because right. And I think that people really appreciate that you take the time to do that. Anyone can, crank out an email note, but to get a handwritten note, I think just makes a difference. It separates itself from the rest of the clutter. So, yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I'm sure you picked that up from the podcast.
Well, I look forward to getting my thank you note for being a guest on your podcast. If you just want to hand it to me on the way out the door, but it's probably better if I get it in the mail.
Well, you're going to get it with your things to do today, Pat.
Nice. Nice.
Now it won't be a surprise anymore, though. So in your line of work, Lisa, what is a resource such as a book, a website, an app that you have found to be helpful, and why?
So, one of the things, when I worked at the Globe, I was so much more connected to the rest of the newspaper industry. We used to go to conferences all the time and connect with people that had similar jobs. And that is, it was expensive to do. So, and I definitely feel a little bit more isolated here. And it's really important to stay connected to the trends in the industry. So I read a lot of industry newsletters, and honestly, it's much better when they get pushed to me than for me to consciously go out and try to find the information. So I get newsletters from the Poynter Institute, which I find to be a great source of innovative things that are happening in our industry, and also the Neiman Lab. Those are my two go-to sources to stay up on what's cooking.
Nice. Yeah. Well, those are newsletters that I haven't looked at, so I'll have to take a look.
Well, if you're a student of what's happening in media, they both offer just great insight and information.
And I'm intrigued with the fact that you're going to start many more newsletters from the paper, too. So I think I can't wait to hear what those topics are going to be.
Yeah, we are working on that right now. One of our most popular newsletters that we have right now is simply daily headlines, right? So you can get a rundown of what's in the paper that day with links right into all of those stories. That's one of our most popular. We also have, from our Thursday entertainment magazine, the Maine Today magazine, we have a newsletter called The Weekender that gives you insights on things to do in Maine. So those are two newsletters that we want to grow and get more subscribers, but we also want to come up with some new product ideas as well for newsletters.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And of course, one thing I want to talk about are your special events, like a Boss and Maine Voices Live, and you use those things effectively to bring people together under your brand umbrella.
Yes, exactly. So, speaking of staying in touch with what's happening in the rest of the industry, we looked at what the New York Times was doing with their events business, and they have a series called Times Talks, where they get people like Bono to come and, and talk about his career. But we get people like Tom Caron, and he's like the Bono of Maine, isn't he really? So
we go way back, by the way,
I know
TC and me.
I know that you do. And that was a great event. So again, as the newspaper's trying to, figure out new sources of revenue, it's important to also deepen our connection with our readers and be out in the community. And people love these special events that we put on. Maine Voices Live has had so many different guests. You were at the one we did last week where we had two birders talking about birding in Maine and how it has just taken off and become the preferred sport of millennials. And we've had a lot of bird news with the kerfuffle over the Maine state bird, which chickadee is it? Also the great Black Hawk. So these birders and the fans in the room, they were loving every minute of it. So it's just another way for us to under our brand umbrella, get people out talking, engaging, and buying tickets and selling sponsorships.
Yeah. And then you record it and you share it on social.
Right. So it becomes more content. That's
Exactly.
right. Yeah.
So that strengthens your brand network.
It does.
Yeah.
I've also had a lot of fun doing the Like a Boss series, where I sit down and interview CEOs from Maine companies, anywhere from Stonewall Kitchens and LL Bean to Colby College, which was a great interview, to Northern Light Health. And every time I meet with these CEOs, I learn so much about their leadership styles. And I hope people that come to those events have good takeaways on something that they can do to help them grow in their leadership.
Yeah. Well, I love all of the events, and I try to come to every single
I know.
one of them.
And you know what? You always start the clapping, and I so appreciate that. I'm like, can always count on Nancy to get that clapping going.
I am enthusiastic, if nothing else.
Yes, yeah.
That's what Angus King said to me once. He said, Nancy, you and I have a lot in common. We might not be the smartest people, but we're really enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't know whether to take that as a compliment or what. But he was considering me in the same category with him. So I thought that was all right.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge compliment. And I also think, too, that's how I see you interact on social. You're always lifting people up and congratulating people and giving kudos. And I do think that, and we certainly see this on commenting on our website, that people just, some people have a tendency to be mean, to be snarky, to be unkind. And that's not a good recipe for building your brand and succeeding socially.
Yeah. And actually, I think that people are more likely to do that on social media when they can kind of hide behind their screen.
Right.
And say something that they wouldn't say to somebody's face. So that's sort of the inverse of the whole premise of this podcast. Is I feel like it should be like you would say it to somebody face and face.
Exactly.
Or you shouldn't say it at all.
Yeah. In fact, we are changing our commenting policy. We're in the process of building this right now, where we're only going to allow you to post comments on our website if you're a subscriber. So we're hoping that's going to elevate the discourse, but also become another value of your subscription. So you can read the comments, you just can't post them unless you're a member of our community.
I was just going to say, part of the club.
Yeah, exactly.
Good for you. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
So my final question, Lisa, is how can people connect with you? What are some of the best ways that PR Maven Nation can get in touch with you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Maine Lisa D. And you can also email me, lisa@masthead.me.
Oh, yeah. You've got one of those ME.
I do.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm also happy to learn about this podcasting space right here in South Portland. It's great.
The Portland Pod, yes. Tanner Campbell has the Portland Pod. It's been a great place for me to record these podcasts, and we have some fun here.
Thank you. And thanks to Tanner.
Well, have a great day, PR Maven Nation.
All right, and vote for those whoopie pies over seagull lobster rolls.
PR Maven Nation, that wraps up this week's podcast with Lisa Desisto from Masthead, Maine. Thanks again, Lisa, for joining us today. If you have any questions for our guest or would like to hear more about a certain topic or from a certain person on our podcast, email me at nancy@prmaven.com. I assure you that I read and respond to every email that I receive. This podcast is presented by Marshall Communications, creator of the 65-Step Marshall Plan Strategic Process, which is all about growing your audience, your network, and your brand. To learn more about the Marshall Plan, visit marshallpr.com. A reminder about Alexa: if you have an Alexa device, you can say, "Alexa, play the PR Maven podcast," and you can pick today's episode or a previous episode. You can also enable the skill to receive the daily PR Maven podcast flash briefing with tips and advice from each episode. Thanks again for tuning in to the PR Maven podcast, and remember, you can always learn more about how to use Alexa's features and subscribe to the podcast at prmaven.com/podcast. We appreciate your listening and encourage you to share this podcast with your friends and coworkers and let them know they can find it on their favorite podcast player. Remember to go out there, keep building your relationships, growing your brand, growing your network, and embracing all the new technology available to help us do that. Have a great week, PR Maven Nation.